Hi, and welcome to session 3 of the Parent University. This time we will be focusing on Google Classroom and what you might want to know about how your child is using Google Classroom from the parent perspective. So first of all, what is Google Classroom? Google Classroom has been used widely for a while at all grade levels, including universities. Google Classroom is a class organization platform that incorporates Google's core G Suite, including Google Docs, Sheets, Slide, Drive, and other Google products, so that students can access everything that they need for class, including class assignments, homework, group projects, and files. It is truly designed for organization and collaboration. Google Classroom saves time and paper. It makes it super easy to create classes, for teachers to distribute assignments, communicate with their entire class and individual students, and it helps both the teacher and the student stay organized. How do we access Google Classroom? To access Google Classroom, you typically go to classroom.google.com and you sign in with the student's ID number at chclc.org. There are a few ways to join a class. Your teacher might send you a class link. Your teacher might also send you a class code. Another way that a teacher might invite you is through email. If you're uncertain through this, throughout the slide deck, we have links to Google's Help Center on a variety of these topics that we're exploring tonight. How do we navigate Google Classroom? While your students might be pretty adept at this already or new to it, we want to make sure that you as parents know where to go on Google Classroom once you're in your child's classroom. There are a few tabs to get familiar with. The first is the Stream tab. Typically, teachers use the Stream to post announcements, updates, and students might see assignments posted there initially. It's a full overview of homework, assignments, and any other posts that teachers might choose to add. The most important tab, though, is classwork. This is where all of your assignments will be stored. Here, they'll see each assignment that is added by their teacher. When they click on a task, they'll see the due date, details, any resources needed, and the status of their assignment, whether they turned it in or not, or if it's missing. Students can also turn in their assignments in the classwork section. The People tab shows all the teachers and the students in the classroom, and this is a great way for students to contact their teacher directly through Google Classroom. Provided is a view of Stream and classwork. I know that many of us are visual learners and we want to see what it looks like. In the Stream, you can see daily announcements and updates. You can also see some comments if teachers initiate that, where students can post as well. You'll also note that in classwork, many teachers will post topics, and this is going to help you and your students stay organized. It might be a topic by week, it might be a topic by unit, a book they're reading, a math problem, whatever it might be. But many teachers use topics so that students can easily navigate through the classwork to find the assignments that they need to work on. Can my child access Google Classroom on other devices? For sure. Google Classroom is also an app. So your students can access Google Classroom on a smartphone, on a tablet, and certainly they can access Google Classroom on a Chromebook or any other device that they choose to use, which makes it really easy to receive notifications, to follow up with teachers, and to see feedback. How can I keep my child organized with Google Classroom? As a former classroom teacher myself, I always share with my students how they can use Google Classroom as a way to stay organized, particularly if they have more than one teacher using Google Classroom. On the main Google Classroom page, students can see in the upper left-hand corner a to-do list. When clicking on the to-do list on the home page, they can see all of their assignments organized by due date, whether they've been turned in or whether they're missing. Students can also access this feature within each individual class to see which assignments are upcoming that they should be working on. How else can I keep my child organized with Google Classroom? Google Classroom also is synced with Google Calendar. So in addition to the to-do list, students can also view the calendar for all of their classes at once if they have multiple classes from that homepage, which I mentioned, or within each Google Classroom, they can click on the calendar to see which assignments are due in the calendar view. So between the to-do list and the built-in calendar, which again can also be accessed on a phone or a tablet, it's very easy for both students and parents and teachers to stay organized together. What does an assignment look like? Once your student receives an assignment and clicks on it, they will notice some directions, they might notice some links and other resources attached. They will also see a button where they can either attach items. Items might already be attached to complete from a teacher. They can leave a comment, either private or public, and when they're ready, they can turn it in. Once an assignment has been reviewed and feedback has been given, they'll see that it has been returned to them. They can open the assignment and see any feedback that their teacher might have provided. Some additional resources are here. While we're not going to play the video today, this is a great short video which recaps some of the tips and tricks that we've shared with you today. In addition, as mentioned on the first slide, Google has many frequently asked questions and answers particularly designed for parents. You can also email your child's teacher at any time with any challenges or questions you might have regarding Google Classroom and the assignments posted this year. Now it's some time for Q&A. Please use the chat feature of Teams and we will follow up by answering your questions. Some might be typed and some might be answered live as we present today.
Thank you everyone for your questions. We're just going to pause here for a moment. We're getting those questions, compiling them, and we'll post them to the group in one moment here. Okay, so we have our first question, which is, can my students see teacher feedback in Google Classroom?
They certainly can. If, for instance, a student is working on an essay assignment or a paragraph and it's a Google Doc that has been shared by the teacher, students might be able to see in real time feedback that the teacher is providing. Once an assignment is graded and returned, then students can see all of the finalized feedback that a teacher has provided. The great thing about feedback is that it goes both ways. Not only can teachers provide feedback and comments to students, but students can as well, which makes it a really great collaborative feature of Google Classroom.
Mrs. Esposito, this is Dr. Mahan. I'm going to chime in and answer one of the questions while you prepare for the next question. Okay. The question is, so if you are not tech savvy, is there a helpline during the day? So we do not have a designated helpline during the day. What we do have is a student support email address. That email address is actually studentsupport@chclc.org. Mr. Levinsky, do you have the next question?
I do. Our next question for the chat is, will previous missing work be deleted from students' accounts? Who clears old classroom work? And I can answer some of that. The older classrooms that you see currently in Google Classroom will be rolled over within the next few days as we prepare for the new school year. The old classrooms will begin to archive. That doesn't mean that they're not available to you. There is an archive tab in Google Classroom, and those would be available to you to view. But the classes will no longer be active and no longer show on the active part of Google Classroom. And starting this afternoon and into the next couple days, you'll begin to see your new Google Classrooms for your classes for the upcoming school year start to populate. I think we have one. Next question here is, when a teacher contacts a student privately, How do we know when we have to resubmit their work after the first time the student submits it?
So a student can always unsubmit an assignment and resubmit it at any point. And teachers will get a notification that's time-stamped to see when that actually occurs. So at any point, a student can unsubmit and resubmit, and a teacher will get notification of that timestamp.
The next question, Mrs. Esposito, and I can answer part of this as well. In the spring, we couldn't use the calendar feature because teachers were not supposed to have hard deadlines, so the assignments didn't show up there. Will that be different this year? So my response to that is yes, the guidelines will be different this year than what we ended the school year in the spring. Students will be allowed to use the calendar, teachers will be allowed to use the calendar feature. However, we do recognize that there will be extenuating circumstances in which students will need additional time to complete assignments. There is more detailed information in the We Return to Learn Continuity of Learning Plan regarding grading and submission of assignments. If for whatever reason your child may be late with submitting an assignment, I highly recommend the child, depending on age, and or you as the parent or caregiver, reaching directly out to the teacher and asking for an extension on the assignment.
I think we have our next question here, which is, we have first and second grade students. How much will the younger kids be expected to know how to use the technology before school starts? Will we as parents need to teach them what to do? Will technology instruction appropriate for age be part of the first week of school?
I can start to answer that. Teachers have been provided with a variety of workshops, online workshops this summer devoted to helping them set their students up for success this September. And a lot of activities, whether it's in Google Classroom or other platforms, are going to be scaffolded and sort of tailored to the age level of those students. Teachers might provide a screencast where they walk students step by step through the process of accessing Google assignments and turning in work. So there will definitely be a lot of upfront instruction and communication from the teacher, not only for the younger students, but for all of the grades as we start in September.
And this is Dr. Mahan. I'll chime in a little bit on that question. Mm-hmm. You do not have to teach your child in advance how to use any of these platforms. That will be the teacher's responsibility. When students enter the building for instruction, they will make sure that your child is familiar with all of the platforms, whether that is iExcel or Nearpod or Google Classroom or Class Dojo, whatever platform the teacher is asking for students to use, they will familiarize the entire class with that platform. There's another question. Is Google Classroom going to be the platform for live instruction? Will there be live instruction?
Google Classroom will not necessarily be the vehicle for live instruction. However, many teachers are going to use the embedded Google Meet code that is tied in and fully integrated in Google Classroom. One of the new features that Google added this past spring is more safety features, so that when a Google Meet, which is the platform for recording a class lesson, is used and accessed through Google Classroom, it creates more of a sense of privacy in that students can only access that Meet when the presenter, in that case the teacher, is part of it. So many teachers are going to choose to use that method, though there might be some variation. The teachers are going to be using Google Classroom to share the information. It's a place where the assignments will be posted. There's directions. Many teachers will embed some video directions and things of that nature. But as far as any live remote recordings, teachers will most likely be using Google Meet or another similar platform where they can actually meet virtually with students.
Thank you. The next question we have is, will parents have their own access code independent of their students? How will parents access accounts for multiple children?
Mr. Polavinsky, do you want to answer this one?
I will, and I'm happy to jump in there. So within the Google Classroom platform, there is not a separate login for parents. There is only the student login. There is a feature in Google Classroom where it will send out alerts about assignments on a regular, either a daily or a weekly basis. That can be included there, but there isn't a separate place that you can tie a login to your account. So with that said, if with multiple students accessing the platform, there are some features within browsers that you can sign out and work with your students to know their username and password, or work with them while they're working on their assignments to take a look at what is in Google Classroom with them.
Mr. Polavinsky, if you could further elaborate on that response. There's another question that is similarly connected. The question is, the feedback function was cumbersome in the spring while managing younger students. There was never a notification in classroom that feedback was given, and we had to hunt through turned-in assignments to see it. Will there be functionality to send alerts about feedback given, possibly on a student email account?
And there will be, and that's a great question. We have in our current level, our high school students have an internal email account that they can view, and we will have coming soon something similar for our middle school students, and that would be the functionality that they would have. Currently for our elementary students, that would be within the Google Classroom platform.
Mr. Polavinsky, there's another question here that you or I could answer. The question is, should children be bringing technology to school on their live instruction days?
Happy to answer that, Dr. Mahan. So yes, if a student was issued a Chromebook from the district, they should bring the Chromebook to their live instruction days, their hybrid in-person instruction days. There is no requirement if they are not using a district Chromebook to bring the technology with them. Certainly it's not, there is nothing wrong with that. If they prefer to use a personal device, we do have what we call a bring your own device environment, where students can bring a device in, again, age appropriate there, to connect to our Wi-Fi network. But only the students who have been issued, we will ask that they bring a device back and forth. There will be district devices available within classrooms for the students that did not use a district Chromebook.
And connected to that, when will Chromebooks be provided? So I can jump in on this one. For students who, or parents who have completed the survey, the We Return to Learn survey, and have requested a device from the district and or a hotspot from the district, if you are a fully remote learner, your building principal will be contacting you for a date to come to the school prior to the start of school to pick up all of your curricular materials, including your Chromebook if requested. If you are a hybrid learner and you have requested a device, when you arrive on your first day of assigned school, your device and your charger will be at your desk for you to retrieve and to bring with you back and forth to school on a daily basis. So we are looking for deployment a few days before the start of school for all remote learners so that they have everything they need on the first day. And when students arrive who are participating in the hybrid model, all of your curricular resources, including your Chromebook, will be available on the first day of school. There's another question here regarding grading. Why did we decide to change the grading style and the severity and difficulty that comes with learning during a global pandemic, which has not changed? So when we entered the pandemic in the spring of last year, many of you will remember that we decided that we were going to be closing schools for approximately 2 weeks. No one anticipated that we would be closed for the remainder of this academic school year. During that time, we had several phases of our continuity of learning plan, a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3. And during each stage of the phase, there were changes to grading as well as expectations for students and staff. We had a We Return to Learn, a We Return to School committee this summer that met numerous times and talked about every facet of the continuity of learning plan. And one of the things that we talked in depth about was grading and live instruction for students to have interaction with their teachers. So after numerous conversations, it was determined that 1, we needed to increase live interactions between teachers and students, and 2, that we did need to have some sort of accountability measure for our students. We received significant feedback at the end of last year that students had participated and completed all of these assignments, and that the grading that was presented and or given did not accurately reflect what occurred during the remote learning time. So all teachers, again, have been made aware of these changes, and these are both outlined in the We Return to Learn plan.
Dr. Mahan, we have a question here. Will every hybrid student have a Chromebook provided by the district? And we encourage everyone today, if you haven't already done so, the district We Return to Learn survey has a box where you can select whether you need a device for hybrid learning or learning from home or remote learning. And we encourage everyone, if you have not already done so, please complete the We Return to Learn survey, which is in Genesis Parent Access, and please request a device should you need one or would like one from the district. That is how we will issue and track devices, and based on the survey results, there is how we will provide those to students.
Mr. Plavinsky, there's one here for you. Have the Wi-Fi dead spots been reduced? Several areas of the schools had poor connectivity. And I will just chime in here and say that we are regularly assessing the bandwidth and internet connectivity within all of our schools. We have, or I won't say we have, the technology department led by Mr. Plavinsky has done a significant amount of work over the years to eliminate these dead zones within our schools. If there is a problem in one of the schools, I would just say you could email me, Dr. Mahan. My email is fmahan@chclc.org, and we will absolutely go out to the school and do a check of the bandwidth. Mr. Plavinsky and the technology team have numerous technology tools in which they can assess the bandwidth and any dead zones that we do have in our schools, and we have been addressing them over the last 2 years. But if there still continues to be one, if you could please let us know, that would be greatly appreciated. I do want to highlight that there is a difference between internet connectivity and your cell phone access and ability for cell phones to work within some of our schools. So if this is a cell phone issue, that is very different than being able to connect to the internet when you are inside of one of our buildings. So again, please reach out if that is a concern. The next question, for young elementary students, they struggle terribly with typing, and we have not had resources to teach our 5-year-old how to type. Will typing instruction be part of the early elementary curriculum? So we actually have a class at the elementary schools called SSI. That course teaches students how to navigate many of the platforms that we are sharing with you today. Students also learn how to type, and which is not the primary focus, but to manipulate the device that they are working on. One of the things that I will tell you as a parent of 2 younger children, one would be to start with a mouse. If you can provide your child with a wireless mouse, that will help them to navigate around the screen. Students, particularly 5-year-olds, their dexterity is not as advanced as some of our older students, so we need to be mindful of that. The kindergarten, 1st grade teachers are keenly aware of that, and they will try to provide activities where typing is minimal and students are really clicking, swiping, and completing short responses, 1 letter or 1 word, which would be developmentally and age appropriate.
Dr. Mahan, there is a question here. Now that students have CHCLC email accounts, will students get alerts for assignments? This spring, I, as the parent, got alerts for missing assignments, then had to pass them on to my high school student. And that is correct. Any of the alerts that come out from Google Classroom will also go to the student account directly.
Thank you for that, Mr. Plavinsky. I'm going through the chat or the Q&A to see if we have answered all of the questions. Oh, here's a question that we have not answered. And I'm hoping there's 2 questions here that we have not answered. I'm going to ask, someone wrote in the chat, what about children in 2 households with nothing? I'm not really sure what that means. If you could please elaborate on that so we would be sure to answer your question. The next question is, how will teachers interact with students who have chosen to be fully remote while hosting in-person class? How will students be able to ask questions live during the class? Will teachers remain in front of the computer during the class time?
I can answer this one, Dr. Mahan.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Blavinsky and I have created demonstration videos for teachers this summer. We have also been talking about the variety of ways that teachers can interact with students while they are in the classroom with remote students. So teachers have been able to not only read directions about how to do this, but we've provided video demonstrations so that teachers can see how they can present for students at home, so that students at home can see the front of the classroom and can also at the same time see anything that is being shared on the desktop or other device in the classroom. While many teachers are going to ask as a protocol for teachers to students to remain muted, we are going to encourage students to use the chat feature to ask questions. There are also some extensions that teachers might share with students to enhance that interaction during live sessions. But you can be assured that teachers are being supported to ensure that during these in-class sessions where students are remote, that they're not missing out on any aspect of instruction.
Thank you, Mrs. Esposito, for that. And here's another question that I believe you'll be able to answer for us. Is there not going to be a standard platform per grade? So for example, if we are trying to group with other families in a learning pod, is it possible that if there are 2 different teachers for students who are both in 2nd grade that are learning in the same household, could they potentially be using 2 different platforms?
Yes, that is the potential. Teachers have been given a variety of options for live recording. Primarily, I think teachers are going to use either Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. But it is possible that students in the same grade with different teachers might be using different platforms for their learning during any given time of instruction.
Thank you. And I think we have one here for Mr. Plavinsky. I do not recall this question being answered. Can 2 email accounts be set up for notifications?
I believe they can at this point within Google Classroom, and it wouldn't be the full notifications. Again, for parents, it would be the summary. The student would receive the full set of notifications, if appropriate. The 2 email accounts would be the summary that would come from Google Classroom.
Thank you. And I believe this is a question just for clarification. The question is, so each and every hybrid student will have a Chromebook provided in school that they will take home daily. Is that what I am understanding? So actually that is not accurate. If you are a hybrid student and or any student in the district who has requested a device through the We Return to Learn survey, and you have been issued a school device because you do not have a device at home to work on, yes, you will be expected to bring that device back and forth to school. If you are a hybrid learner and you have a device at home and you do not need to have a school issued device, you will have access to a device in school, but you will not need to bring that device home daily. And to piggyback on that, if you need a device, you can request the device at any time during the academic year. You can request that device by contacting student support at CHCLC. Right now, though, if you are in need of a device, I'm hoping everyone on here has already completed their We Return to Learn survey so that we can appropriately deploy devices at the beginning of the academic year. Yes. There's a question here. If students are unable to perform virtual synchronous learning on their half day for the last 1.5 hours of school on their in-person day, will they be able to watch a recording, and what does that actually mean? So the first thing that I would say is we are all adapting to a hybrid and or remote style of learning during the current pandemic. So we understand that families will absolutely have different caregiver needs, family needs, educational expectations, and we are trying to meet everyone's needs. I would strongly encourage that as often as possible that students participate in the live synchronous instruction with their classmates and with their teacher, because nothing replaces the interaction with the teacher on a daily basis. Teachers do have the option to record their lessons and post them. However, it is not a requirement of the district, as teachers, which is different from the spring, will be teaching live synchronous instruction in the morning and in the afternoon. So depending on the grade level of the child, elementary, they may be able to have a separate contact period with the teacher to ensure that they are caught up. There is also 2 periods built into the middle school schedule for additional support and for students who may have missed their synchronous instruction. And at the high school level, because we are working within a block model, there will be opportunities for teachers to support students who may have missed synchronous instruction on different days. They can also encourage students to stream into the classroom on their not assigned day. So many options. I would encourage you to reach out to the classroom teacher as soon as possible if you are going to have a situation which inhibits your child from being able to participate for the last 1.5 hours of school on a daily basis. I believe this question was answered, but we may want to circle back to it. Will parents be able to get their own Google Classroom ID? It is hard to get my child to let me use her sign-in. This is for a middle school student.
And I can understand the difficulty there. At this time, the Google Classroom platform does not have a secondary sign-in feature to link parents to students.
Okay. The next question, again, I believe this is from Mr. Plavinsky. So do you have enough computers if my child leaves our shared computer at home, and you will have one just in school for my child?
And again, our plan is we are distributing devices to those who are on hybrid instruction and have requested devices. And our goal is to have devices available within the district for use as well when appropriate for instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Plavinsky. Ms. Esposito, I think you can handle this one.
Okay.
If a student is having trouble accessing the internet at home or other challenging circumstances that make it difficult to attend classes or complete assignments, what are the ways to make sure this child can still succeed?
Well, as soon as internet connectivity resumes, it is imperative to reach out to the teacher right away. Teachers all know that there are some bumps in the road with being able to connect. One of the great things about Google Classroom is once assignments are posted, they don't go away. So if a student is having an issue in the moment accessing the classroom materials, all they need to do is contact the teacher when they can to let them know the issue, and all of the materials should still be there for them to access at that time.
Thank you. The next question is there a dress code ban on pajamas for remotely connected students while on video chat? So we do have, and I'm going to pass this off to Mrs. Esposito in a minute, we do have expectations in terms of student dress and student code of conduct. There's information that Mrs. Esposito has put together regarding remote learning etiquette.
Yes, in the previous parent session, there were a few slides on video etiquette for students, and that refers to things like logging in on time and using eye contact, or if you're being called on to respond. But if a student feels more comfortable in wearing pajama pants, then they also have the option to turn their video off. And so students can mute themselves, which is recommended, and use the chat feature, but they can also turn their video off as well. So if you want to review that previous slide, there are a number of, there are a variety of tips and tricks that students can know and that teachers will review with students at the beginning of the year regarding routines and expectations, and manners and propriety, just like they would if students were live in the class.
Mrs. Esposito, somewhat connected to that, how are younger children expected to ask questions from home? They cannot type in the chat.
So teachers for the younger grades are aware of that. So while we're sharing that the chat feature is optimal, the teachers for the younger students will provide students an awareness of, you know, in 5 minutes, we're going to return and you'll have a chance to ask your questions. Or in a few minutes, you'll have a chance to hold up your drawing or share your letter. So while the older students who can type and write words into the chat are encouraged to do so, that will be something that the teachers for younger students will give them sort of an essence of, you know, after this segment, be prepared to respond, or after this task, be prepared to share your work. So there will definitely be those changes regarding participation dependent on grade level and student ability.
Thank you, Ms. Esposito. The next question is, my child will be in SAC during her in-school days. Will she be able to log in for the PM session? Yes, your child will be able to log in during the PM session. Mrs. Rockhill, who is the principal at the Barclay Early Childhood Center, coordinates the SAC program along with Mrs. Wethington, the Director of Pupil Services for the district. And they are working with the SAC staff as well as the building principals to ensure that students who participate in SAC are able to log on and to complete assignments in the afternoon. Mr. Plavinsky, this is a great question for you and one that we have talked about. Can you speak more about the hotspots and how they work? We have 2 parents working from home, and 2 students?
Dr. Mahan, that's a great question, and thank you for posing that. And we've received a lot of questions about internet bandwidth that's required for online streaming. And we shared some tips in our first video about connectivity and questions that you may have regarding connectivity. And the amount of bandwidth that's needed for remote instruction and for remote learning to consume video is not an overwhelming amount of video for most broadband connected plans. So the purpose of our hotspots program is to fulfill for families that do not have broadband internet, namely Comcast or Verizon in their home, to give them an opportunity to use a device to be able to connect to a faster internet connection than what would be available on a cell phone. So again, if you have a Comcast plan or a Verizon plan in your home and you have connectivity in your home, you should have sufficient bandwidth to be able to do remote learning. My suggestion would be to check the distance from your hotspot, from your router to where you're using for remote learning. Sometimes that the distance there and not every area of your home is covered equally. If you try doing learning closer to that spot or see if it's an option to move that router to a different part of your home, that can be helpful. And if you're having difficulty with your internet speed, I would reach out to your internet provider for further support. It's difficult to say what challenges may be involved there or whether there is something going on with your internet service. Again, for people, I think there were some questions about multiple people or people working from home at the same time as remote learning. There should be sufficient bandwidth if you have a broadband internet provider in your home. That being said, challenges and technology glitches happen, and sometimes bandwidth gets congested on various reasons, and that could be involved either on the provider side or either side of the pipeline there. So again, talk to your internet provider at home if you have one and you're having challenges with the bandwidth availability.
Thank you, Mr. Pawlinski. So this is a 2-part question, and I believe the first half of this question may be in response to a previous question. And then there is a question about computers, Mr. Pawlinski. So the first part, which I will actually answer, is, but if the video is turned off, how can you ensure the student is paying attention and being alert? And then, this will be for you, Mr. Pawlinski, do the teacher's computers have enough memory for all of this work? And is the school Wi-Fi up to par for all of this? So I'll answer the first question. We have strongly encouraged in the We Return to Learn plan under Etiquette for remote learning that students do have their camera and their video on for live instruction. However, we do understand that each family circumstance and situation is different. And if the child and or family is not comfortable with having their video on, the teachers do have other strategies in which they can ensure that your child is engaged. That includes asking the child to respond to questions in the chat feature. That includes having the child turn themselves or turn their mute off so that they can verbally respond to questions. That includes placing students into small groups where they can interact directly with their peers. So the teachers have been given a variety of strategies from Mrs. Esposito, as well as their building principals and through their own research that they have done since the school closure initially in the spring to really support student engagement. And again, that really goes back to and speaks to why we have increased the amount of live synchronous instruction for all of our teachers across the K-12 spectrum. Mr. Pawlinski, do you want to talk about the teacher computers?
I do, and for the tools that we are using as a district, the computers that we've issued to our staff do meet the requirements to stream and to create the content that's being part of the We Return to Learn plan. Regarding the question about Wi-Fi, we continuously monitor our network in district for congestion and for usage, and we'll continue to do so as part of this plan. We don't anticipate that the use of these tools will exceed greatly the use that we see during a normal school day. So there will be certainly different components of it, but live streaming and video watching and consumption of video content is a part of our curriculum and is part of what students and teachers use every day in their classrooms. And again, we're going to continue to monitor the district internet and the tools, and the team that we have here will continue to make sure that our staff is supported and they have the tools they need to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Plavinsky. And the final two questions, I'm going to ask both of them separately, but I will respond with one answer. The first question is, if a family's internet is down so that parent nor student cannot easily access the teacher for extended period of time, how will these families and students be reached? And the second question is, we found in the spring that all lessons took much longer than anticipated times to complete because of downloading, printing, scanning, and uploading items. Has anyone taken into account this extra time to complete? It sometimes took until 5 or 6 p.m. to finish all the work for the day for an elementary student who needed parent help on these things. It was exhausting for the entire family. So one of the things that I can say to you, myself, Mrs. Esposito, and Mr. Plavinsky, we all have elementary age children, and we can absolutely empathize with what you are saying. We all have experienced internet issues where we were unable to connect and get our own children connected into the classroom teacher. We all work full-time jobs, as you can see, and we all are supporting our children because as parents, we all want the best for our children in the academic environment. So what I would say is, if you encounter any of these issues, if the assignments are taking much longer than you anticipate, contact the classroom teacher right away. If your internet is down and you're unable to get on, when you are able to get on, contact the classroom teacher right away. Shoot them a message. If you are having concerns in regards to, you have to print, the teacher should be telling you in advance that there are going to be documents that you need to print. Why? Because you may not have a printer at home. Why? You may have run out of printer paper or printer ink. So we recognize that as parents who are working full-time as well as juggling and now homeschooling, that we are going to encounter all sorts of varying situations. And I think communication is key in the success for not only the We Return to Learn plan, but for the success of each and every one of our students. And we want to ensure that our families are able to engage and to stay engaged with our school community. So communication, communication, communication. Mrs. Esposito or Mr. Plavinsky, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Absolutely. Teachers, given the experience in the spring, teachers have been working hard all summer long to anticipate how to tackle problems they experienced in the spring, to think about how to expedite processes for students, how to make learning engaging and meaningful, and how to support students in just about any issue that might come up. Teachers are willing to work with you, they are flexible, and they will adjust if necessary.
And I'll chime in from the technology perspective. Things happen. The internet goes down at times, the power goes out. We've encountered quite a few different circumstances, and I can tell you again, just as Dr. Mahan mentioned, even with my own family, and being that I manage an IT department, we still have had internet challenges at home, or I've had a child who was having difficulty with their device. And sometimes going back, doing a reboot, going back in, things restart and you're able to reconnect and engage back into that remote learning. We do the best we can to keep our tools up as much as possible and keep that bandwidth open and available, and the teachers to be able to stream. And but things do happen along the way. Even as an adult joining in meetings, I'm sure you've encountered difficulty with a Zoom call on occasion, or a Google Meet, or a website not loading, or a video not playing. And that resiliency to be able to work through technical challenges and realizing that they're frustrating, and I'll agree with that, but we can work through them together, and that flexibility of our staff to work with you and work with your child to be successful is a key component there.
Thank you, Mr. Plavinsky, for that. I believe we have answered all of the questions. Parents, if we have not, please feel free to reach out to any one of us for additional clarification on the questions you may have. I believe we have one additional one that just came through. There are actually two. The first one is, why can each teacher decide which platform to use? There should be only one to avoid confusion. So I will start off with this one, and then Mrs. Esposito, if you'd like to chime in.
Sure.
So one of the things that we really like to highlight within Cherry Hill Public Schools is teacher autonomy. And our teachers have a wealth of knowledge and large, what I would say, teacher toolkits. So the way that they decide to deliver content in their class is a very personalized approach. And we want to ensure that teachers are making meaningful connections with their students through platforms in which they are comfortable. So we do not determine the platform. I will say that we are strongly encouraging that all of our students, all of our teachers in district are using Google Meet and Microsoft Teams for live synchronous instruction, but your child's teacher may also ask for additional technology platforms that they would like to use, some of which Mrs. Esposito talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Actually, tomorrow night's final Parent University session will cover some of the most popular platforms that teachers in a variety of grade levels and content areas plan to use this fall. As you know, the landscape of technology platforms changes all of the time. So something that a teacher might use in the beginning of the year might not prove to be as effective as he or she likes, and they might switch gears to something else. And all of that is so that instruction is meaningful, effective, is engaging, and overall promoting student achievement in this environment. So we try to support teachers in the acquisition of these platforms and using them effectively. As we mentioned, we've been providing workshops all summer long, office hours, help sessions to prepare teachers for whichever platforms they intend to use this fall.
And the last question that I have here is, what advice can you give to parents that are having their child attend a program to help with remote days? I personally have to work, therefore my child will be attending a help center. So from personal experience, and this is more of a personal story, I have an excellent babysitter in my mother, and she has been explicit with me that she will do anything I need her to do. My children will be alive, they will be fed, they will have lots of fun. She will not be doing technology instruction, remote learning, or homework with them. So I can completely understand the question. The one thing that I would encourage you to do as a working parent is to make sure that the center in which your child will be attending has a space dedicated for your child to work and to complete their assignments during the academic day. I would also make sure that if your child's going to be at this help center, that the classroom teacher, if this is an elementary age child, has access to a designated individual there, so that if your child is having difficulty logging on or needs support, that person can reach directly out to the child, out to the teacher, and not have you distracted from your workday when they are there and able to support the child with their studies. And I believe that is it. Mrs. Esposito and Mr. Plavinsky, thank you for hosting the third of our Parent University sessions this evening, Google Classroom and Parents. Again, if there are any additional questions that you have, please feel free to email any one of us. We will be more than happy to answer the questions that you have. Mrs. Esposito, would you like to close us out?
Sure. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 o'clock on our final session. As previously mentioned, we will be previewing some of the most popular and useful platforms that you might anticipate your child might be using at this coming school year. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.